off. Thanks, Tom, for your kind words, and I would just like to invite everybody up for the plenary from the partnership session this afternoon. So for those who don't know me, I'm Joanne Mannering and I'm an Environmental Officer, Department of Water and Environmental Regulation. I work in the Environmental Water section, and part of our job is to define environmental water provisions, environmental water requirements for water-dependent ecosystems across the state, so quite a big job. I work with Robin Looms, who spoke this morning, so she presented this morning, we're on the same team. And I just want to congratulate all the speakers from this afternoon session. It was really inspiring, and it's really positive to know that there's really good education programs and partnerships that are happening right now for wetland conservation and to protect our environment. So I'm opening the floor now to any questions for any of our speakers from this afternoon. Anyone? Anyone? Don't know, jump at once. No.
So Catherine, how do we get these education programs out to all the other groups? I mean, at Lake Claremont, I've got all the schools that we now turned away because we can't actually run the programs, but in a snap, I could have 10 plus schools lining up for a program. So it's a matter of getting grant money, getting the program first designed and in place and to be there. So how do we do that? 92.
That is a common challenge for all education centres, as we all know. Sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes you've got a program and you can't get participants, even though the program is great because people can't afford to get there or it's a time frame. It always goes both ways. Some of it is about how you set the program up. So you actually do have to set it up, run it as a pilot, so only have it offered, say, 1 day a week for the first start until you build up. If you've got 25 schools that are willing to go and they're willing to pay what it costs for you to run it with casual teaching staff, then you're on a winner. Because then if you can have 8 schools or 5 schools every week and you can book them out for a whole semester, then you can have someone who's essentially casual but full-time and make sure that your cost analysis, running the program, pays for itself. That's the challenge. Finding the balance between what schools are able to pay and what you need to pay somebody to actually do the teaching. Because you've done the development, you've got the program ready to go. You don't have to develop it, but you need to have it set up as a lesson plan, something you've got the resource, the environment. Nobody else can do that. But you need to be able to train up a couple of people who are willing to be on a casual roster and come in and work casually. But you need to ensure that what you're charging the school actually covers those costs. And that is a challenge.
I'd just like to offer, I suppose, an alternative perspective. So Perth NRM a few years ago now started a program called Adopt a Beach. And it's been really successful in the Perth metropolitan area because that's the region that we service. But so much of what's in the program would be really exciting, useful, interesting to all of the other children that are in Western Australia. And I think given one of the things that we've learned with COVID is that we can really do technology well. And there's opportunities to make the programs that we do not just based around the places that we work in, but to make that available to many other people. And I'm not sure what sort of model you'd use, if it was some sort of people would still pay a fee or they'd be a member or something. But I think that's something that as a sector is worth us exploring more. The other thing that I've just recently become aware of, I mean, I know from my own kids, but at the end of the year 7s, the year 8s, the year 9s and the year 10s, and sometimes the year 11s, don't do anything really for the last few weeks of school. And we've just been engaging with All Saints College and they're now looking at a program for their year 9. So one of the last weeks, for a few days, they're going to run a specific program around leadership and around environment and that sort of thing. So I think there's some other areas to tap into as well for those sorts of programs.
I absolutely agree. And the other thing is that I didn't say, which I should have, is working with your local council. Because if you want to work with schools just in your catchment area to bring them to your special place, City of Coburn funds schools, pays for the bus, that sort of thing can really help.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and that's something we've certainly found at Herdsman, is that we do get requests for people to come out rather than be at the centre. And of course the Gould League used to run clubs in schools, and so we did have an education officer who went out to schools funded by the Education Department. But because we're revisiting that whole thing now, we have done a few incursions, and we have been to a few wetlands with one of our people, and it is a model that we're looking into. And also, as Ingrid said, particularly because of COVID, we've also looked at the how to be agile, so that how you switch to a model where you check in with someone online and they lead you through a program. Those who were with my group, I was talking about Insect Investigators, which is a project we're doing with schools, and that is, with some of the schools we're doing it remotely, with some we visit them, but with some it's an online program. So I think it's something, as different providers of this, we need to come up with a really good model. And I mean, as Tom mentioned, we're all working towards the same thing. We all have to fund it somehow, but it's quite doable, and it's something that the schools need, and we need to come up with a great model that works so that more kids get to do conservation stuff on country. So no, it's a really, really good question to ask, and it's something we need to develop.
Barb, this question's for you. Now, one of the hurdles that was mentioned up there was negotiating with a whole bunch of other teachers if you want to do a full day or a half day excursion. So you seem to be able to get... you must be a very good negotiator, or you can just... Is it because of the Surf Science program, I guess what I'm asking, it makes it easier for you to assemble those kids than if you didn't have the program?
Is it just to work? Yeah, it's actually a combination of both. It's like I'm offering them something in return, either extra dot, because I've taken the kids in my own dot, but with our Surf Science program, we do have, some of the programs do have priority. I do get a bit of whinging from the English teachers, you know, or the maths teachers. We've got a test, and, you know, I have to negotiate, give up some of my science time so that they can do that test within that time, but we do have that bit of flexibility. When I was teaching in primary school, it was actually easier because I could just take my whole class for the day. I was actually I did a science specialist teacher in Derby as well, so I would do, again, double dots, take extra classes, organise these huge excursions and give those teachers PD, essentially, set it all up for them, cover everything, drive the bus myself, so that they came for the ride, but they also got involved. It's like, you know, doing a dolphin rescue and getting the fisherman to help, and all of a sudden he's looking out for the dolphins, and that's what happens with the other teachers. Oh, I didn't know this was here. This is amazing. So it's giving them a reason to be involved in their excursion.
A question I have for all of you. Lifelong learning, it's one of our objectives, as well as public education. The difference is about adult education and lifelong learning. The value of what all of you offer is really getting an engaged community. And what I'm sure people would like to hear, what are the challenges? How do you overcome those challenges? Because a lot of you have been very successful. But as we all know, an engaged community will make the difference. So I'll leave that.
Can I just, I'll start. It's experiential learning. You know, you're not just reading about it, looking at a video. You're taking kids, caregivers, you know, teenagers out into the community, you know, planting a tree, you know, weeding in the fairy turn conservation area, and then, you know, building little huts, and then seeing that those fairy turns, the chicks, are using your shelter. and that gives them more ownership. You know, they observe things, and then they do take their parents back, their families back, you know, to look at the trees they planted. So it's that just being part of it, and then you want to do something with it, you know, take care of it, nurture it. It's like holding a baby swan in the cygnet rescue. You know, all those people that were involved in that, the same thing. If they had just seen it on the news, they wouldn't care. But the fact that they came and held a swan and they were part of an experience.
I think absolutely, that's exactly right, Barb. But also cast your mind back to just after lunch and Ingrid's keynote, because that as well, not just at school level, but every single one of those aspects of partnerships, shared vision. So for me, in a range of different backgrounds and projects, the ones that are successful are the ones where we have multiple partners. They don't all give money, but they all have a network, and the combination of all the networks sharing each other's expertise, reaching out, each of them spreads a slightly wider net. That wider net brings more people in, and then your network grows. So we, you know, have our local governments who are working to achieve shared goals with us. We can do things that they can't. They can get to people that we can't. You know, the messages can get through. Others have access to resources. We might get a grant, but we might be delivering a similar program to, say, state NRM. So we can cross-promote. We could actually share our online resources, put both logos on it, build it together, a bit like we have with Grow, you know your patch. And whammo, you've suddenly got success because you've got a broader foundation to build it on.
Yeah, look, I agree with all of that. I think it does come down to that emotional connection, which is the swans, you know, holding it in your hands, seeing it, that personal connection. And I think relationships, building community is really, really important, and diverse communities particularly, because that's stronger and gives you more links. And I think it is something that we could do really well to work together to achieve. But I think that the most successful projects are that emotional connection and the social connection, really, that people get, that really wonderful, warm, fuzzy community that they come, that just draws people in.
I think one of the important things to recognise is that there's many, many people out there, and a lot of them are really busy, and so offering a variety of options that they can just come for a one-off. They don't need to do any preparation. They don't need to do anything. They can just come and, you know, enjoy something and then never do it again. Or in our case, you know, you've got the app. You can do it when you've got 5 minutes on your terms. Having this really wide range of different things means that more people are likely to just step in and tread the waters and just see what it's like. And then we got them.
I want to thank you all. I want to ask about teaching to point of need. Whose need? How do you decide? How do you fit it to the curriculum, if at all? Barb? Or anyone?
Yes, point of need. So if someone is interested and engaged in something, then I make the curriculum fit where those kids are heading. So like the fishing line bins, year 4 boys, Indigenous boys, they all fish. So by engaging the boys, you've got the girls along because the girls are more compliant generally. But if you're true, so if you've got one group of kids engaged, then it's easy. They then engage with their families, and you can just follow through. You know, one excursion gives you 2 weeks of work. So that's how and same with my year 7s or my 8s or 9s. You know, like the pandemic, you know, I've got year 9s. I'm over there in Tamworth, and the pandemic's all, you know, branching out. And I'm doing my lessons, I'm reversing. Normally you start with the nervous system and you end with the diseases. I started with diseases because that was relevant, that was topical, they needed to know. So you've got to be flexible, on your feet, change, you know, like, you know, people talk about, you know, there's no technology. You've still got to be able to direct your lesson. If a kid doesn't understand something, you've got to sidestep, go backwards. So just whatever your audience is interested in, you can make it fit the curriculum. You don't have, you know, step 1, step 2. You have the whole week or whole term's procedure, and, you know, you might go like that, but you still get to the same point at the end.
Sorry, I just wanted to go back to the previous discussion. I'll try to remember the point that I was going to make. So one of the things that I've realised in the past 5 years or so that I've been with NRM is that funding chops and changes very quickly, and people become attached to programs that you offer. So just as an observation and something to think about, I think if you're going to start a program, it's really worthwhile being clear if it's going to have a defined period, to make sure that people understand that and to know what your next step is going to be, how they're going to go on the next part of the journey. Or if you're going to start something and you don't know where it's going to go, make sure you have a good process for capturing the knowledge that you've learned, of having resources available for later on, or maybe sharing them or making them available to other people. Because if people become disheartened too many times, they will step away and they'll find something else to be engaged with. So that was just something else I thought about.
I had a question for you, Jane, and just wondering what the opportunities you have for sharing the knowledge about the populations and what's happening with the turtles with local governments. And I remember an incident about 10 years ago when I was an acting branch manager being phoned up by some local residents of a wetland in Perth. They were watching officers dragging out turtles from a wetland and putting them into wheelie bins in the middle of summer. In the middle of the day, most of them died, and there was nearly 100 of them, because they wanted to drain the wetland and clean it out and fix up the drainage systems in it. Since then, there's been quite a bit of knowledge shared, and I'm hoping it wouldn't happen again these days. But that program of changing the drainage on that particular wetland has continued through the pressure of people living around it who want a permanent or a seasonal wetland turned into a permanent wetland, so they've got water to look at. But I'm just wondering how much support you're getting from local governments and the opportunities you have to share the outcomes with local governments.
That's the really wonderful thing about Turtle Trackers, was that it was developed with the City of Cockburn. And the wonderful thing about that is that it was the local council that was developing the program for what worked for them. And that when this program that we've just got now, our Saving Our Snake Neck Turtle, we were able to take that learning with our partners in the City of Cockburn and share with the other local councils. So it's being local council driven, and we have about 10 local councils so far involved in that program, and obviously we're hearing more on board. The other things that are possible, and I'm hoping that that dreadful story that you just told is history now and won't recur. Anthony's done some amazing talks and has over the time. And as part of this project, we're hoping to set up a website that will be accessible, that will give those stories. And there's already the 1 Million Turtles website that has got a lot of how-tos on there. The videos, like I showed in our little talk that we gave this afternoon, there are more of those. So I think there's a greater capacity now for talking. I don't know when your thing happened, but in my experience, I've been involved with turtle research now for about 10 years, but for the first 5 or so, we didn't know enough to go out and talk. It takes time to learn how things are happening and what the focus of the research is, and it takes time to make those networks and contacts as well. So I'm hoping and I'm feeling quite optimistic that from now on we will be able to have a good communication with people that want to know. Yeah. Yep. Did you want to say anything?
I think we might.
I guess I could just say that these days, when wetlands are drained to be clean, there is quite a clear process and a licence that you have with someone who knows what they're doing to either relocate the animals or temporarily house them and re-release them. So there is very much a much tighter process, and I would be very disappointed to hear that would happen now, because I think certainly councils know very well they don't touch anything before they get onto someone who knows what they're doing. So I think you should be safe.
Just on relocations, we've actually done a study, and I've actually tracked turtles after they were relocated, and it's not very good. So I think we'd be aiming to not drain wetlands, because we had turtles that we moved, then went 6 k's all the way back to that wetland. So it's just like, you can move them, but they're probably going to move back, and that's pretty global for reptiles from the literature I've read, is they try to go back, and it generally ends not very well. So
Yeah. So we've run out of time now, so no more time for any more questions. I just want to say thank you to everyone for this afternoon session. It was fantastic. Thank you for your time.